Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to Food for Thought with Trey. I'm Trey. Happy holidays. Happy everything. Happy spending time with your family and being happy for waking up to see another day. Cheers. I got some loose leaf tea going on. Again, it's jasmine. Anyways, I wanted to do a quick video to do a brief recap of what I, in previous videos termed as patterns. So, and oh, I'm sorry. And what's funny is what was on my mind when I was getting ready to turn the camera on. I know we've, as far as holiday time, something a little funny. Um, I know we've heard of Elf on the Shelf. Well, I'm filming from a desk with a mess or mess on a desk. So anyway, I know it's kind of like corny, but it was just interesting. I was like, wow, this is like Elf on the Shelf, but it's a mess on my desk. But anyways, um, we know that Candace is on uh, break right now. That will break on break this week, but there were just some things that popped up that stuck out to me, and again, I just felt would be pretty interesting to make a video about involving the last few days of events, especially involving Mr. Jones, Mr. Alex Jones. So I believe on Candace's X account, she mentioned that um, Alex is revealing himself, and it's like that's a pretty he is, take it how you want it, whatever the background reason is. It seems like he is revealing himself, and she mentioned diagnosis as debate, and as I'm adding on, versus counter argument with receipts. So diagnosis as a debate versus counter arguments with receipts. Yesterday's video we talked about, or was it yesterday's video or the video before? We spoke about bringing up valid points, which could be your truth, but speaking the truth in front of or to persons who agree and persons who don't agree, but allowing disagreement to be respectfully, wholesomely, and transparently debated or argued. Um, I felt that this diagnosis as debate was something that I know Candace had spoke about before, and some things that we or patterns that we've seen before in terms of when someone is speaking their truth or someone speaking their truth, or at least speaking something that they feel is valid, which is truth. But anyways, when someone's speaking their truth, and then you have another person or persons who would, instead of debating or coming up with receipts to um, oppose the point that was raised by the other person. Let's say person A has a truth to speak and person B is the opposing parties. So instead of the opposing parties coming up with receipts that X out person A's truths, they choose to make insults and, as I call it, kick up mud instead of sticking to the point. I personally don't see I don't personally see that as productive. It reminds me of being in school, whereas you have someone who, as we might have termed, a nerd. I was one of them, but you'd be termed as a nerd because you like to learn, deeply learn things that the teacher was trying to teach. And you might not be up on the latest fashion and the latest slang and the latest whatever. So you'd be looked at as, uncool. And as a result, the cool kids would make fun of you. And instead of speaking about, hey, why do you dress like that? Why do you this? Why do you that? Why do you whatever? It's like, hey, you have a big nose, or you have a, funny clothes, or you're poor, or whatever the case may be, instead of sticking to whatever the point is, right? I don't see that as productive. So that's what this reminds me of as far as the diagnosis as debate. You know, let's, why can't it be debate, not diagnosis? And, I guess the hidden or not as obvious piece of that term is when we have persons making diagnosis instead of debating with receipts. Um, are they a medical doctor? Are they a psychiatrist? Are they a psychologist? Are they trained and certified, qualified to describe what a diagnosis, to put a diagnosis on someone? Um, so we've noticed that kicking up of the mud, the um, diagnosis versus debate, from someone that I'm still surprised, is not, I guess, speaking the same talk that he used to, which is Mr. Jones. And again, I'm looking at it as a tiered effect, possibly. Could it be the brand? Now, if you don't know what the brand is, please go back. Maybe about 2 videos ago, I spoke about it, but real brief. Um, it's related to the place that Candace spoke about those Egyptian planes flying from. And shout out to Coach Colin. Coach Colin, which he does an amazing show as well as many others. Coach Colin termed it as Philadelphia, and he every time he does it, and he does the aliases for things. He's a pretty talented person, but he's also funny. And the way he does it, he makes the things interesting and funny. But he terms it as Philadelphia. So I term it. I didn't want to copy. I don't want to copy off anybody. So I term it as the brand. So again, I'm looking at the diagnosis versus debate and the kicking up of mud, the distraction strategies as maybe a tiered effect from the brand on down to mass media, on down to talking heads, and so on and so forth. Dot dot dot. Um, in relation to the piece that, or what Candace spoke about, I think on her X account about diagnosis as debate. There was a gentleman I saw that actually wrote a letter to Alex Jones on his X account. And excuse me if I pronounce his name wrong. John Mappin, John Mappin, John Mappin, John Mapin. And sorry if I pronounced the name wrong, but just some things that he spoke about, and I'm not going to read the whole letter. That's actually on his X account again, John Mappin, 2 P's. Um, so, and it's related to the diagnosis as debate. The facts. So, as John Mappin pointed out in his letter to Alex Jones, the facts are no longer confronted. The reasoning is no longer challenged, and debate gives way to insinuation. Something must be wrong, and so some of the phrases that have been said about Candace, something must be wrong with her, they say, or if it's another person, he's unstable, she needs help, or he needs help, what have you. I'm sure we've heard these things and many similar um, quite frequently. Um, so he went on to say that, and this is John Mappin, he went on to say that when you suggest that Candace Owens has mental health issues, we are not witnessing a medical opinion. And again, that's that diagnosis as debate. Now, granted, there may be some doctors that that could possibly have diagnosis that they'd like to share, but I'm not talking about them. I'm speaking about the Joneses, the Neffs, etc., etc. He also went on to say, um, why this matters now. And he went on to say that this matters now because Candace Owens represents something profoundly irritating to the managerial class, a coherent, articulate voice that refuses to be managed. And again, a coherent, articulate voice that refuses to be managed. Now, and let me finish. She speaks plainly. She does not ask permission. Why this matters now. Candace Owens represents something profoundly irritating to the managerial class, a coherent, articulate voice that refuses to be managed. She speaks plainly. She does not ask permission. And so I wanted to read that again just so it kind of sinks in because, you know, I think there's like a line between being disrespectful and advocating for yourself. So that part where he says she does not ask permission, that's related to that. That reminds me also of what I said, I believe, in yesterday's video where I spoke about, the old stench, the old stench. It stinks. Get out of here. The old stench of the gatekeepers is kind of floating on away, and there's a new aroma. There's a new aroma, almost like this jasmine tea. There's a new aroma floating around, and that's of the gate kickers kicking the door in. And in a certain context, one could view it as, well, these are gatekeepers. They're keeping the gate, stewarding the gate, tending to the gate versus, others want to kick the gate in. That's rude. That's crazy. That's this, that's that. Well, in the context of advocating for yourself in situations where we're talking about assassination, danger, defamation, slander, and being ignored, I believe that, as Mr. Mapping put it, she does not ask for permission. And I don't believe that, one that has a strong belief in their truth should ask permission either. Now, be respectful, speak plainly, because you know how we get into these situations where there's debates and everyone's just shouting. I don't see certain persons doing that. I don't see Candace doing that, and I don't want to make this about Candace, but she's a great example. I don't see her doing that. I see her, you know, without permission, speaking her truth, asking for rebuttal, and then also bringing receipts. Right? I feel as and speaking plainly and allowing the disagreeing party to speak their truth and, if possible, come up with receipts, but not kick up mud and start the insults. I don't, and shout and lie and things like that. I don't believe in that as well. So that's a interesting and I believe productive way that he wrote that. So also with the patterns, and again, that go along with the diagnosis as debate. There was an alleged crazy list that persons are put on. So, at one point, and this is this is just my opinion, and I believe Candace spoke on it as well. At one point, Michael Jackson was put on the crazy list. Kanye, Ye, was put on the crazy list, the alleged crazy list. And now it looks like, by the help of Mr. Jones and other persons, she's been put on the crazy list, and countless others. In relation to the crazy list, alleged crazy list, right? I mentioned that I took a cruise around X town, and I saw where Mr. Jones, interestingly or curiously enough to me, has in his X account banner, a picture of himself and Tucker. And it's curious to me because, as close as we know that Tucker and Candace are close, and then we have what happened from the switcheroo, the switch of sides, so to speak, from Mr. Jones, for whatever reason. It's just curious that we have like these minute degrees of separation, and my question related to, again, these last few days of the switcheroo, the screenplay as I call it, um, is Tucker next to be put on the alleged crazies list? You know, um, we saw what happened and what was said about him from Mr. Shapiro, I believe it was reportedly, um, at Amfest, the past Amfest, and then which Tucker stood up for himself, um, via a X post from Tucker on December 10th. He explained that because he's had long lasting relationships with and experiences with and in some parts done business with um, Candace, Blake Neff, Erica, and others, he loves them. So it kind of almost like feels like he's like, in some sort in the middle. And like I said, I'm not on a side. I'm not on this side or that side. I'm on the side of the truth, which would by default put me on the side that is telling the truth, right? So in a December 10th post, um, Tucker spoke about that he loves the person I just named, and he also spoke about not trusting the one of the three letter uh, governmental agencies, Frank, Brian, Ignatius. I'll put it that way. I don't want to. I don't. Again, I don't. I don't know. I try to tread as lightly as I can with certain things. So we'll just say with the three letter agency, Frank, Brian, Ignatius, that he loves these persons, but he doesn't. And there's some persons that are in that agency that he has a great respect for. But like he put it, there are some bad apples in that agency as well, and there were some events that he, I think, phrased as setups that lacked clarity. And one of the examples he gave was J6. I know there are many different opinions. I'm just reporting what he said, but that's one of the examples of the setups, and I'm sure we could go down the road of many others, but lacks clarity. And again, we talk about it's that same pattern, the clarity versus the lack of clarity versus transparency, and speaking truth with receipts and allowing others that disagree to debate and tell their truths as well, versus, again, like Tucker framed it, a setup that has lack of transparency, to say it simply, right? So it comes back to, again, the part that, and so we go back to the part that John Mappin spoke about in terms of not asking for permission. And it's a piece, it's a thing of what we call asking the hard questions, having the hard conversations. And that's a pattern too. I'm known to do that. Hey, this whatever subject matter, and I'm not speaking about this one, but any subject matter may not be popular, but we have to talk about it. We have to ask the tough questions and have the tough conversations. And I believe that Tucker and Candace, as well as many others, have done a pretty good job at that as well. Um, so um, the so that kind of brings me to the end. Um, and it's, in terms of pattern slash recap, one that I guess that again popped out to me, popped up to me. Um, it was reported by the Jimmy Dore show, that during AmFest that TPUSA set up a replica tent of the one that Charlie Kirk's assassination happened at. Um, Reuters reported, um, a family takes a photo and a replica of the tent Charlie Kirk was in when he was assassinated during America Fest, the first Turning Point USA Summit since the assassination. Also, AOL via a reporter from MS Now um, stated or reported, this is a recreation of the tent where Charlie Kirk lost his life at UVU in September, and people are taking selfies with it. Um, Brandy Zadrozny, Brandy Zadrozny, I guess, of MS Now, um, reported from the conference dubbed America Fest. You can see all around people are saying like, "For Charlie, for Charlie." They're wearing replicas of the shirt that Charlie Kirk was wearing when he was assassinated. They used a different word than assassinated, but again, I don't want to keep bringing that up that way. Um, so my question to you is, based on there being this replica tent that Charlie Kirk was assassinated in back in September, do you think now, based on those reports, the report that Jimmy Dore that the Jimmy Dore show spoke about was like saying like, hey, this was a unaliving tent, we'll say, and how could basically tasteless, right? And then these other two reports from the let's say commercial media were speaking about it more in terms of a recreation, a remembrance. What are your thoughts? Is it do you view this replica tent that was at Amfest as outrageous, distasteful, or remembrance, paying respects? And I look to see what you think in the comments. And again, thank you for joining me on food for thought. Sorry, I'm a little congested still, but thank you for joining me on Food for Thought, and I look to see you next time.